All right, so here we go. 9a test Amadah. Sukkah Ishena, an old sukkah, literally means an old sukkah. Psulim is going to be possible. Beis Hillel machshir, and Beis Hillel hold that an old sukkah is going to be kosher. Now, the question is, what's considered an old sukkah? So if you ask that question, well, good for you, because the Gemara asks it, the Mishnah rather, Vezi Sukkah Yeshena. What is considered an old sukkah? Any sukkah which was created or built 30 days before Sukkot. That's only on condition that he built it 30 days with no intention for the mitzvah of Sukkah. But if it was built on in mind, on condition set aside for Sukkot itself, then I could even go ahead and build a sukkah immediately following the previous sukkahs. So we have machlekes. Is the sukkah yeshena kosher or not? Rabbi Yehuda says the Rabbanan, Rabbi Hillel says that it's kosher. Beis Shammai says that it's not. According to Beis Hillel, you have to have no intention when you build the sukkah. And we'll see it's only on and we'll see later on that the building of the sukkah is really on conditional, according to Beis Hillel, on the schach. If when I put up the schach, I have in mind that it's for sukkahs, that's all that really counts. While according to Beis Shammai, the building of the sukkah has to be lishma. It has to be intended for sukkahs. Within the first 30 days, we could assume that any sukkah you're building within 30 days of sukkahs, we could assume is going to be for sukkahs. Therefore, you don't have any intention. Doesn't make that much of a difference. However, prior to 30 days, then you have to have intention. The shame mitzvah sukkah. Now we go on to the Gemara.
When they talk building a sukkah, they talk the walls or they talk the sukkah?
I do believe that we're talking about the walls. Does that say different there? Yeah, I don't think so. I think pretty sure we're talking about the actual building of the sukkah itself. Okay. Now we'll go on to the Gemara. My time in the Beis Shammai. What's the reason for Beis Shammai? Amar Kra, the pasuk writes, "Chag haSukkah shivas yam l'Hashem." The pasuk, the verse states in Vayikra that it's when it's talking about the mitzvah of sukkah, it's a holiday for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chag haSukkah, the holiday of sukkah is 7 days LaHashem, for Hashem. Sukkah asuya l'shem chag b'ina. We need a sukkah which was created for which asuya l'shem chag b'ina. We need a sukkah which was built with intent for the intention of sukkahs. Well, Beis Hillel, so what does Beis Hillel do with that verse? Beis Hillel holds you don't have to have in mind to when you build a sukkah, you don't have to be a sukkah lishma. It doesn't have to have in mind for sukkahs. But we have a pasuk. The verse states that the sukkah has to be Lashem. Beis Hillel, Beis Hillel says that this verse of Chag HaSukkah Shivas Yam Lashem is needed for the halacha of Rav Sheshes. The Amar Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says, Bishum Rabbi Kiva, Minayin la'atzei sukkah. How do we know that the atzei sukkah? How do we know that the schach sha'asurin kol shiva, that the beams of the sukkah, not necessarily schach, but the beams of the sukkah itself is asur b'hana kol shiva. You can't derive any personal benefit from it. All 7. It's muksa. Now we have the mitzvah sukkah, and the sukkah for 7 days is for Hashem, and I cannot derive any benefit from it. So Beis Shammai uses the verse to tell you that the sukkah has to be lishma, has to be, you have to build it intended for the mitzvah sukkah. While Beis Hillel takes that verse and he uses it to teach us that a sukkah is forbidden to derive benefit from it all 7 days. Vatanya, and another proof to this, Vatanya, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, just like the chagiga which we bring all every Yom Tov, they were supposed to bring a chagiga offering, and that chagiga offering was not permitted for a certain amount of time until the first imurim, until the end of I believe the first night. Just like the chagiga for a certain period of time is forbidden to derive any benefit from it, meaning you can't eat it and enjoy it. Also, you cannot enjoy the sukkah for anything else other than just standing there to support the schach. Shinamar. And what's the verse brought down? Chag HaSukkos Shivas Yomim LaHashem. We have a Chag HaSukkos, 7 days for Hashem, and we have a play in words. Ma Chag LaHashem, just like the Chagiga is for Hashem, Af Sukkah LaHashem. Also, the Sukkah is going to be for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So again, we have, so Beis Hillel brings down two different instances where we, from different Amram, that we see that this verse of La Hashem is used to tell us that the Sukkah is forbidden to derive any benefit from the entire 7 days. Now, what does Beis Hillel do now? How does Beis Shammai Nami Bailei Lahachi? So now we have a problem. Beis Shammai is utilizing the verse to teach that the Sukkah has to be built within 30 days or prior to 30 days with full intention, Lishma. But Beis Hillel utilizes the verse to teach you that the Sukkah is pretty much muksa or asr bahana, forbidden to derive any benefit from it. All 7 days. So how does Beis Shammai know that a Sukkah is forbidden to derive benefit from it all seven days? We are on, I see some destroying. We are on Tes Amud Aleph, and we are about 9 lines down from the Gemara, where the Gemara starts, and we're going back and forth. If the Sukkah has to be created with intention to be built on, with intention to be utilized on Sukkah, on Sukkos, Beis Shammai says it does. Beis Hillel says it doesn't. Beis Shammai brings a pasuk, Chag HaSukkos Shivas Yamim Hashem. The festival of Sukkot to be 7 days for Hashem. So we see from the Sukkah has to be built for Hashem. Beis Hillel utilizes that pasuk for something else. Beis Hillel says, no, that Sukkah is to teach you that the Sukkah is pretty much muksa. You can't derive any benefit other from sitting in it to fulfill the obligation, all 7. So our question now is, how does Beis Shammai know this halacha that one cannot derive benefit from the Sukkah, all 7? Enachanami. So he says, Enachanami. So it's true. That is a pasuk Beis Shammai utilizes. So Beis Shammai is going to fall off from his original proof. And this verse of Chag HaSukkah, Shivas Yamim Hashem, ultimately everyone agrees to, teaches us that a Sukkah cannot be utilized for anything other than its mitzvah, all 7. So now Beis Shammai is left without a verse to prove that a old Sukkah is not kosher, old Sukkah doesn't work. So how does he know that a Sukkah has to be intended to be built for Sukkahs only? If I build a hut, it has to be, and I plan on utilizing it for Sukkahs, it has to be the intention for Sukkahs or within 30 days. So he has a different pasuk. The different pasuk is Chag HaSukkos Tasa L'cha Shivas Yamim. The pasuk is that the festival of Sukkahs you should make for yourself 7 days. So it's sort of, Rashi explains that we sort of like flip around the pasuk a bit, and the right way to read it is sort of Sukkahs Tasa L'chag, a Sukkah you should make for the festival. Instead of Chag HaSukkos L'chag, it's more Sukkos Tasa L'chag. So the point is that we see from the verse here that the verse is telling us that a Sukkah should be for you, should be created for the Chag. Sukkah Asuya L'shem Chag Gina. A Sukkah, so Beis Hillel says, here we have a verse that explicitly states that a Sukkah has to be created for this festival of Sukkahs. That's why. This is the verse that Beis Shammai holds to prove that a Sukkah has to be either within 30 days or with full intention for Sukkahs. Well, Beis Hillel, what does Beis Hillel do with this verse? Because Beis Hillel doesn't learn that a Sukkah has to have any intention for Sukkahs. You could take any hut, chop off the top, throw on schach, and you're fine. Without any, when you built the hut, there was no intention to actually utilize it for Sukkah. So Beis Hillel, so Rabbi Yehuda needs this verse of Sukkah that we just mentioned, Sukkah Asuya L'shem Chag Pi'inan. Sorry, my bad. Let me do that again. So Rabbi Hillel needs that verse. So this pasuk of Chag HaSukkah is Ta'asalacha, this the Shivas Yamim, the festival of Sukkah. You should create yourself a Sukkah for 7 days. Comes to teach you that even Chali Shamayit, even during the intermediate days of Sukkahs, one is permitted to go ahead and build a Sukkah for to sit in. Usually, you're not supposed to do any major work during Chalamayit. You're not supposed to work. A lot of work is permitted, but this is fully permitted. And how does he see that from the verse? Because it says Chag HaSukkah. See, he has a play in order. Really, it's Chag B'Sukkah. B'Chag HaSukkah Tasalcha. On the festival of Sukkot, you can make yourself a Sukkah. Meaning on the actual, now it can't be on the actual days of the days of Yom Tov. The actual Yom Tov is forbidden, just like Shabbos. So it must mean the intermediate days of Chol HaMoed. Shammai, how did Shammai know that one is allowed to go ahead and build a sukkah for on Chalamayid? If the verse that Beis Hillel is learning that from is utilized to teach you, is that Beis Shammai is utilized that to teach that a old sukkah is forbidden. Beis Shammai sfirlu ki Rabbi Elazar. Beis Shammai holds like Rabbi Elazar. The Amar ein oisen sukkah b'choili shilmayid. He argues. He says no, one is forbidden to build a sukkah on choili shilmayid. So it ends up working out fine. The original pasuk we brought down, Chag Sukkah is ta'asalacha. Chag Sukkah Shivas Yamim Lashem. Everyone agrees is to teach you that a sukkah one cannot derive benefit from the sukkah also. The second verse of Chag Sukkah is ta'asalacha Shivas Yamim. That is coming. That we utilize to teach that. That is the verse that Beis Shammai teaches us that an old sukkah is not permitted, and according to Beis Hillel, that teaches us that a sukkah is permitted to be built on Chalamayid. And Beis Shammai said that's asur anyway, so he doesn't need a verse for it. Okay. Well, Beis Hillel laslei de Rabbi Yehuda, but Beis Hillel does not hold of Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rav, the Amar. Now, what is and what is the Beis Hillel laslahu de Rabbi Yehuda, and Beis Hillel does not agree to Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Beis Hillel laslahu Rabbi Yehuda. What's that going on? It's a question. Let's go on the question. Beis Hillel laslahu de Rabbi Yehuda, and Beis Hillel doesn't hold Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Osa minhak tzutzin. Yeah, so we're about to bring out Rabbi Yehuda holds. Amar Rav, the Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Also minhak tzutzin. If one makes a head, if one creates a sukkah, tzitzis. Okay, we're going to go ahead and try to. It's like this. This is the following. So this is a question. Beis Hillel, let's let you Rabbi Yehuda question mark. And Beis Hillel doesn't hold like Rabbi Yehuda. Now we're about to talk about the halachas of tzitzis, and we're going to turn out that everyone agrees that tzitzis has to be when one goes ahead and creates the tzitzis, it has to be done l'shem mitzvah tzitzis. It has to have a full intent for tzitzis. So we're going to apply that to sukkah and say, why doesn't Beis Hillel hold of? Why is it that the Beis Hillel holds by tzitzis that has to be done l'shma, and by sukkah it does not? That's what we're about to go to now. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, also minhak tzutzin. Let's say make tzitzis from throwing like the leftovers of the material that are coming out of. Let's say I go ahead and I create a garment, and there's leftover material from the side. One is not allowed to take that material and make it into tzitzis, or minhanimin, or the extra threads, or minhagradin, or from the fringes, psula. It's forbidden to do such a thing. Now, however, if one takes a ball of thread, he has a whole ball of thread. He takes it and he just connects that after the garment is completed. He connects that a random ball of thread that was never really spun it was never intended for. You have a complete thread, and that thread was never created for the intention of tzitzis. And you just take it and you tie that onto the edge of the beged. Kshera, you have completed. You have fulfilled your obligation of tzitzis. Kamrisa Kamid Shmuel. Now, Rav said this, and the name. Rav said this over to Shmuel. Now, interestingly, Rashi explains that this Rabbi Yehuda was. So we have a statement of Rav, and the following statement. This idea that one cannot take the leftover material that is already on the side of the unfinished. If you have the threads coming out from the side of the material, which after you're done creating the garment, one cannot go ahead and make that into tzitzis. So that we saw was Rav, because Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Rav, and Rashi explains that the Rabbi Yehuda was the Talmud of Rav. And after Rav passed away, he went to Shmuel and he took Shmuel on as his Rebbe. And he always kept on informing Shmuel what he heard from his Rebbe Rav, and Shmuel would tell him if he agrees with that or he argues on that. So Ki Amrasa came to Shmuel. When Rabbi Yehuda brought this statement of Rav in front of Shmuel, Amrli Af Min Asisim Nami Psula. Shmuel said, I argue and I hold that also from a random ball of thread, one is also forbidden to go ahead and just attach that to your garment in order to fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah. Why? The be'inan tuviyah lishma has to be spun. It has to be spun in mind for tzitzis. So one takes yarn which was spun for no intention at all and attaches that to this garment. You're not going to kind of it. So you have to take a thread that was created and spun for full intention of the mitzvah of tzitzis. So hachanami nivai sukkah asuri lishma. So doesn't Beis Hillel hold just like you by tzitzis? So one has to create, just like for the mitzvah tzitzis. When one is creating an item, to fulfill a mitzvah with, it has to be with full intention from the very beginning. Same too, according to Beis Hillel, why is sukkah any different? Why don't you have to go? You should go ahead and have to build a sukkah for the intention of the mitzvah of the festival of Sukkot. The answer is Shani. So what's the difference? That's where we are. What's the difference between Sukkot and Tzitzis? Shani Hasam Damakra Gedilim Tasa L'cha. The by Tzitzis it says, and fringes you should make for yourself. You should create it to fulfill your obligation. So the Sukkot apparently doesn't have such a pasuk. There's no L'cha. Therefore, it's a special L'cha by Tzitzis. Hachanami, we have a question here too. Sukkah is Tasa L'cha. The Sukkah also has the verse of L'cha. So why can we say the same thing? L'cha, a Sukkah has to be created for you for the sake of to fulfill the obligation, according to Beis Hillel. And with Ba'ilei, we take Gezayla. That L'cha, the pasuk of the verse that says L'cha by Sukkah is coming to teach us that a stolen Sukkah does not work. So Hasamami, the Ba'ilei Mute Gezayla. So why isn't the L'cha by Tzitzis? Why is L'cha by Tzitzis coming to teach you the shame Tzitzis that a Tzitzis has to be created from the onset? Or the mitzvah Tzitzis, maybe it should come and teach you that that's needed for that it can't be stolen. Then we have another pasuk of Tzitzis. Tzitzis, we have an additional verse that you have to go ahead and create it for them. So it has to be for the one that originally owned it. It can't be for anyone else. That teaches us that one cannot steal. So right now we end up having we had a machlekes, had an argument. We had Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai said an old sukkah is forbidden. You have to have intention for a sukkah. Beis Hillel says you could use any random chop off the top and throw schach on top. It's fine. We wanted to learn from Tzitzis as a question on Beis Hillel, because Tzitzis does have to have it has to be intended. A Tzitzis has to be intended to be spun for Tzitzis. We said no. There's a pasuk of L'cha for you to fulfill the obligation of Tzitzis. We said Sukkot also has the same obligation. It says L'cha, so maybe Sukkot should also be only built for the sake of the obligation of Sukkot. And that we said that's needed to teach you that a stolen Sukkah is forbidden. And Tzitzis has an additional verse to teach you that stolen Tzitzis is also forbidden, leaving the L'cha pasuk of Tzitzis. The teacher has to be the Shema, but Sukkot does not have any open Sukkah for that. So now we turn to 9b and we're by a new Mishnah. Any questions? Okay. If one goes ahead and he builds a sukkah under a tree, it is as if he did it inside the house. Don't see what that means. What does it mean? It's as if he did it inside the house. Sukkah al-gabi sukkah. We have a sukkah on top of the sukkah. The bottom one is going to be kosher, and the top one is going to be pasul. And we'll also talk about exactly what the case is. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, im ein diyaron. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. The top one is going to be valid, and the bottom one will be pasul. And the Gemara will explain why. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, im ein diyaron bel yoina tapchanik shera. Rabbi Yehuda says if no one is living on top, then the bottom one will remain kosher. So according to the Mishnah, you cannot build a sukkah under a tree. It's like in the house. Two sukkahs, one on top of the other. The top one is going to be kosher. The bottom one will be pasul. According to Rabbi Yehuda, if no one's living on it, no one's utilizing the top one, I could sit in the bottom one to fulfill my mitzvah. Okay, says the Gemara. Amar Rava. That which the Mishnah states that a sukkah, you cannot place a sukkah under a tree. That's only a tree where the shade is providing the majority, where the shade of the tree there's more shade than sunlight coming through this tree. But if the sunlight is more than the actual, if there's more sunlight than shade, then it's permitted to go ahead and place a sukkah under the tree. That's according to Rabbi Memai. Why? This is my proof is that the Mishnah says as if it was under a house. Why say that if I build a sukkah under a tree, it's as if I built it in the house, which is obviously going to be forbidden. It's invalid. Just say it's invalid. Why you have to have the extra words of it's as if you built it in the house. Allah, Hakamash is coming to teach you that a tree is like a house. Just like a tree. Sorry, just like a house. That obviously, if you have a proper house, I hope that there is more shade than sunlight in the house. From coming from the roof. Also, a tree is daimei lebayis. A sukkah under a tree is only forbidden according to Rava if there's more sunlight than if it's only forbidden if there's more shade than sunlight. And if you come and tell me that there's more sunlight than if that's true, I have a sukkah under a tree and there's more sunlight than shade. Who cares? How does that help you? We have a big problem because at that point, we have pasul schach because schach, which is connected to the ground, is going to be pasul anyway. So you have pasul schach. On the halachas, you have pasul schach, even though that if a pasul schach on top of kosher schach, the pasul schach is going to invalidate the entire sukkah. So we have a problem. Very nice that it's more sunlight. If this tree has more sunlight than shade, but still we have a problem. That is schach pasul. So amara papa v'shachavitin. So so then that we have an answer is that we say that the schach itself is together. It's lowered enough that it gets mixed in to the actual schach. So it's not that you have two layers. It's not like you have a layer of schach and then you have a tree on top of it, which is going to pasul. That's usually the halacha. If you have pasul schach on top of it, if you have pasul schach if you have pasul schach is always going to pasul. The only time so therefore if I have a tree which is clearly on it by itself and therefore it's pasul, it's attached to the ground, it's going to invalidate the entire sukkah. So what's the trick? If you make it into one big mixture, if you take the schach with the vines or the tree and you mix and you lower it into the actual schach of the sukkah, at that point it comes into a mixture. Just like if one has a piece of non-kosher meat, it's not kosher, you're not allowed to eat it, but it falls into a mixture, then there are questions that arise that perhaps it could be nullified. So the same thing here. When it creates a mixture, one asks if it's a mixture, who really cares? So let me backtrack then. When there's a mixture, and then it'll be batul. Once you have a big mixture, so you have the kosher schach, then you have the non-kosher tree mixed in. We push it sort of into the actual schach, so it's one big mumble jumble mixture. At that point, we will say that it's a mixture, and as long as there is the majority of kosher schach, you're going to be fine. So that's what the halacha is. So that's what Rava meant to say is that a tree which is going to be providing, it was not providing the majority of the shade, could be mixed into the schach and be nullified. Now the Gemara asks, if that's true, what's the whole chiddush of Rava? What's it coming to teach you? Of course, if there's a mixture, we go by the office of nullification, and it should work. Now the same in I might think it might be a typical rabbinic decree. I might think that you cannot go ahead and even if there is the trees mixed into the actual kosher stock, I might think that it's still going to be invalid because the rabbis would decree. We're nervous that we're not going to allow it when it's mixed because we're afraid it might get unmixed. So someone might see a tree, but someone might see a sukkah with a tree with a live tree in mixed into the stock. He'll think that's kosher. He'll go home and place a sukkah under a live tree where there's a clear significance difference between the two without any mixture. So no, it's not a problem. In such a case,
a quick question:
we don't mix.
Can the height of the tree make a difference?
Is that really true? There's no gezerah. We learned it's a gap, and if you spread over vines of a grape, besad glass or a different type of vine, besad kisus or ivy, one cannot spread out these items over your sukkah, and it will be and if one does spread this over the sukkah right on top, it will be pasul. But if there is a large amount of kosher schach, or you cut it before you cut it, now it's no longer attached to the ground, then it'll be permitted. If you're going to come and tell me that this is a case where it's not mixed in, how come it's dar schach pasul schach kosher? That's not going to work. So obviously the case is where it's mixed in, and we already see that there's no gezerah. So what's the chiddush? We already have a different brisa that teaches you that if you have live branches mixed into the actual schach, as long as there's no, you could apply the laws of nullification, it'll be permitted. So we already know this. So what's the whole chiddush? The same I might think that b'diavad one is not permitted. That one that should not do this. One should not do this with unless he's forced to. Lichatchila one could do it. One should not do that. One should not lichatchila mix in the have the mixture of the live with the kosher schach, the live branches which are invalid with the kosher schach. But if he does it, okay, we'll let him get away with it. Therefore, we have two. It's brought down twice to teach you that no, one is lechatchila permitted to go ahead and mix in vines. Trees a little harder, but vines you can actually have it snake up, mix it into the actual tzach. As long as you have the proper laws of nullification, it will work. Okay. We're up to sukkah, agabi sukkah, by the two dots. So the next thing the Mishnah said is that a sukkah on top of the sukkah, it's the top will be kosher, the bottom will be pasul. You just said on condition that the bottom one will, no one's, as long as the top one is naked, then the bottom one will be permitted. Sukkah, agabi sukkah. Tanarman. The sukkah is teishru below the sukkah is shetachas sukkah. We're trying to figure out where does this halacha come from? How could you derive from the Torah that sukkah on top of sukkah is forbidden? So it writes, "Sukkah is teishru below the sukkah shetachas sukkah." It says with one sukkah one should sit, not two sukkahs, meaning not one on top of the other. Below the sukkah shetachas ilan, and not a sukkah under a tree. Below the sukkah b'shebetay chabais, and not a sukkah in a house, right? Not in a house, not in a tree, and not on top of a sukkah. Adarabba, the sukkah is tarti mashma. I don't understand. How can you bring from that verse? That verse is plural. Plural sukkahs. So maybe it could be a sukkah on top of a sukkah. That's in fact, so you should prove the opposite. It's written in singular form. Therefore, we could learn from there that one sukkah and not two sukkahs, meaning not one sukkah on top of the other. Amar Rabbi Yomi. Now we're about to go through several different instances of different combinations, and one could be pasul, one it could be pasul, kosher. Amar Rabbi Yomi. At times both are kosher. Both sukkahs on top and the bottom can be kosher. Not like the Mishnah brought down a case when it's not, but there are times when it could be. There are times when not only is one pasul, but both are invalid. Sometimes the bottom one is going to be kosher, and the top one will be pasul. And there are times that the bottom one is pasul and the top one will be kosher. So I was going through this yesterday. Then I was playing Lego with my kids. I'm like, why not? Why not? Should we have one sukkah? We have another sukkah. We have another sukkah.
It's Sukkah Lego world.
Yeah. So here we go. So then I realized it's pretty small and no one's going to be able to see it anyway, but who cares? There are times when both are kosher. So this would be the case when both are kosher. So let's go through it and I'll show it again. That the top one is that the top one has more that the top one has more. The bottom one, sorry, has more has basically invalid schach because there's more schach. There's too little schach because there's too much sunlight. But the top one is fine. So the case would be that it's within 20, right? So that's not a problem. The bottom one has very little schach. The top one has a full amount of schach. Therefore, that we look at the bottom schach as if it's nothing. Nothing's there. So it's not really a sukkah on top of a sukkah. It's one big sukkah within 20, just with two levels. As long as they don't hit it, sit on top of each other, as long as you take care of it, it's not going to be a problem. So that's the first one. The next one is going to be pa'amim shtein psuais. There are times when both will be pasul. When both are going to have more sunlight, both are going to have more shade. Both levels have the proper amount of schach. But the top one is higher than 20 ames. So this is going to be a higher. This is within 20. This is higher than 20 ames. So the top invalidates its pasul schach. The top is pasul schach, just like a tree. It's equal to a tree. The middle one also has a large amount of schach, but The problem is, so then maybe the middle, so why isn't the bottom one not kosher? Very good, the top is not kosher because it's above 20 amas. But the lower one has a lot of schach and it's within 20, so why is it not valid? Why is it not that valid? The answer is because the top one has a full amount of schach, just like a tree. It's as if there's a tree over the bottom sukkah. And we said a tree is schach pasul. You don't have schach, you can't have schach pasul on top of schach kosher. So the top one is over 20, therefore we look at it as if it's schach pasul, just like a tree. The bottom one, unfortunately, even though there's a full amount of schach, and there's much more shade than sunlight, it invalidates the bottom because it has schach pasul on top of it. There are times when the lower one is kosher and the top one is kosher and the bottom one is going to be invalid. Sorry, the bottom one is kosher. Yeah, the bottom one is kosher, the top is invalid. Now we turn on to 10 Yud Amud Aleph 10b. What's the case? That when the bottom one has the full amount of shade, and the top one doesn't have enough shade. So this is pretty simple. This is when the top does not have a large amount of shade, it has just two little things, two little pieces of wood. The bottom one is fully green. In such a case, the top is nothing. The top is nothing. It's totally insignificant. It's within 20 anyway, so we don't look at that. That's pasul. And so therefore, it's as if you have a sukkah, which the walls go a little higher on the sides, but that's fine. So therefore, the bottom is permitted, but the top is invalid. And at times, the top is kosher, and the bottom one is going to be invalid. What's that case? Both of them have the full amount of shade, and then it's within 20. So this is the case of the Mishnah, that they're both within 20. So the top has a nice amount of schach, provides full amount of shade. The bottom one is the problem, and the bottom also has a full amount of shade. In such a case, this is the typical case of a sukkah on top of sukkah. Two sukkahs which are both valid on top of each other. The top is going to be, then the top is just a regular sukkah. That's fine, it's the top level. But the bottom one has a sukkah on top of it. In such a case, it's going to be forbidden and invalid. Now, Gmara asks, Pshita, these cases are pretty much obvious. So on that, we say no. There are some cases which are not that simple. Which one? Tachtoina kashera, in the case where the bottom one is kosher, ve'elyoina pisula, when the bottom one is kosher and the top one is pasul. I'm afraid, I might think that we'll make a gezerah. We'll go ahead and we'll make a gezerah that when the top one is below 20, but there is too much. In the case, in this case, I might be afraid in the following case. This case is just, it's a regular sukkah, and the top is totally significant because there's not enough shade anyway. So this is the case where the bottom is kosher, the top is invalid. It's the only reason why it's not invalid. It's not because it's outside of 20 amas. It's because there's not enough schach on top. Therefore, the bottom one is fine. I might think that we'll go ahead and maybe at one point some of this schach, these little pieces of schach, which are not giving enough shade at all, they might go above 20 at some point. If they go above 20, now that's schach pasul. When there's any schach pasul on top of a sukkah, it's going to invalidate the lower sukkah. So even though looks like a very simple sukkah, we have everything within 20. This full amount of the bottom sukkah is fine. The top is not really a sukkah because there's not enough schach. What if I go ahead and I raise it to above 20? Now this is above 20. This is chach pasul, so I have chach pasul under. It's like a tree on top of my sukkah. So I might make a decree that one can have a sukkah on top of a sukkah, being nervous that the chach is above 20, even when it's not above 20. I'm afraid I might be decreeing it because it might be above 20 at some point. And they say no, it's not a problem, and that is the Gemara's cases of back and forth. Yeah. As long as it's just whatever the height of the, including the bottom one, whatever the height, the actual height, regardless, so it doesn't matter how it got there. It's there. The schach pasul is like a tree when there's wood higher than 20 on top of a sukkah. It's invalid, just like you have a tree on top of the sukkah. Now that one's invalid because it's 20. This one's invalid because it's alive. It's a live tree. But regardless, you're having invalid schach on top of invalid schach. Okay. We'll go a little further. I didn't plan on it, but we got time. How much is supposed to be between the lower sukkah and the higher sukkah? Meaning that, hold on. Yeah. At what point do we say that, let's say I have a very thick schach, or I layered my schach, I have one layer, then I left some space, and I made whatever, some very artistic design of schach, whatever it is, for the coloring, for the different. At what point do we say, at this point, the top layer, we consider it its own sukkah, and therefore we're invalidating the entire sukkah because of the layer of the schach, not because I actually have someone sitting up there between. So it's high enough. What is this? Once it's more than a tefach between, if I have schach and then I have a tefach and then I have more schach, at that point we say it's a sukkah on top of a sukkah. Because we find when it comes to a dead body in a house, an impurity, once there's a tefach, we consider that as a oil, as a covering. And at that point we say the impurity spreads, doesn't go straight up, and it just spreads within the airspace of the entire house. So we have a tefach that tells you a tefach is called a covering. So therefore, if I have a tefach between the two layers of schach, at that point we say the higher schach is called a covering, and and that's called a sukkah on top of the sukkah. The time because you learn tefach al tefach, brum tefach, maybe it's a tuma. That's what we said. A tefach, one tefach by one tefach is enough to spread it out. And also it blocks it out. It makes it spread out all over the open space. At the same time, it blocks it from going all the way up to Shemayim. So we see that it's called a valid one tefach, a height of one tefach by one tefach is enough to say that that's going to be its own entity. However, if it's less than the height of one tefach, it will not. It's not a barrier anymore, and it's insignificant, and it's sort of like nullified by the ground or the bottom surface, and it will go straight up to, and the tuma, the impurity, will go straight up to Shemayim. Now, the Rav Chisda of Rabbi Boruch had Huna Arba Shloim Etzinu Makayim Pachis Me'arba. Now, they said that to be considered a sukkah on top of a sukkah, the space between the upper sukkah, the upper area, and the upper sukkah and the lower sukkah, it has to be at least 4 tefachim, because we never find anything less than 4 tefachim, which is significant anyway. Now, so that's our second opinion. Just it has to be 10 tefachim. Why? My time to Shmuel, just like a sukkah is not going to be kosher less than 10 tefachim. So why would we say a sukkah on top of a sukkah if the upper level is less than 10 tefachim? It's not a sukkah. It's a pasul sukkah. So how could you say that you have 2 layers and the upper layer is only 5 tefachim? You have a sukkah on top of a sukkah. How can you say a sukkah on top of a sukkah? The upper layer is not called a sukkah yet. It's less than 10 tefachim. So these have to have 10 tefachim to fall under the category of a sukkah under a sukkah.